All right, thanks, Molly. Welcome, everyone. We are here today to talk about the autonomous SOC. But more importantly, we're here to talk about you, right? The practitioners that are sitting behind the keyboard. We know the narrative right now is loud and oftentimes scary. You hear autonomous SOC and you think, oh, I'm going to be automated out of a job. That's not the reality that we're seeing. That is not the future that we are building at SentinelOne. But the reality is that the traditional SOC model is broken, right? We're drowning in data, we're fighting alert fatigue, and quite frankly, we're burning out our most valuable asset, you, right? Today, we're going to flip the script, right? We're going to explore how AI is not your replacement, but a force multiplier that will help you be better at your job. This is about the Analyst Amplified. So we are going to be making some predictions today and some forward-looking statements. This is our best assessment of where we think AI is going. We will, however, caveat that with the fact that AI is moving very quickly and we could be wrong. So my name is Jeremy Goldstein. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at SentinelOne, and I am responsible for Purple AI. And I am joined today by Anthony Lascala. Anthony, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Anthony Lascala. I'm SentinelOne's technical evangelist. A little background: my prior roles included director of cyber and vCISO, and before that, I was a SOC manager. So I very much sat in the seats that you guys are sitting in today. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, and to note, Anthony and I are both wearing matching bomber jackets just for the occasion. SentinelOne bomber jackets. So this was coordinated. All right, so we do have a packed agenda for you today to take you from the why to the how. Right, we're going to start with a reality check, where Anthony is going to take an honest look at the state of cybersecurity. We're going to talk about the new arsenal, maybe demystify some buzzwords so you know exactly what tools are at your disposal. Transforming a day in the life. This is going to be the core of our session. Right, we're going to talk about a SOC workflow and show a difference between the old way and the autonomous way. Leveling up and career education, we'll talk about how these tools actually upgrade your role and make you feel more fulfilled. And then SOC 2030, we'll give a glimpse of where this technology could take us in the next 5 years. We'll close out with some Q&A. Anthony, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start off by taking a look at a very familiar and very frustrating day in the life of a SOC analyst in a standard SOC. Now, this is a reality for too many security teams. Triage, hunting, investigating. These are all processes that are a series of manual and time-consuming steps. And I remember when I was back at the SOC, my analysts would spend hours just on triage, just trying to get through our backlog of alerts that we just got over the last night or even in the last few hours. That would really hammer our efficiency, and we wouldn't get to investigating, responding, remediating sometimes until the afternoon. This is a very linear and human-centric model. It's just not sustainable, and we're not just frustrated with this. We're falling behind. So we need to take a look at, let's have some real talk about the cybersecurity industry. Now, I could go into all sorts of different stats around burnout or how bad backlog is, but that's not really applicable to you guys. You guys know it. You guys are living it. Let's be real here. The cybersecurity labor market is brutal. It is incredibly challenging to stand out and to get that job. On the flip side, from the SOC manager perspective, when you're trying to hire qualified talent, that is also a constant challenge, not even to hire and retain that talent. It is a constant challenge that you have to work through. Now, how are you going to stand out in this tough labor market? That's going to be through AI. You may have heard of the saying that AI will not replace your job, but someone who knows how to effectively use AI will. That is very, very true in the cybersecurity industry. Having these tool sets at your disposal, knowing how to work with them and knowing how to be that AI orchestrator is going to make you an incredibly valuable asset in the SOCs to come, in the SOCs in our future, and even in the SOC today. So what are those tool sets that we're getting access to, the new arsenal that we have at our disposal, and the AI technologies that you need to know? Well, first up is machine learning. sure you guys have all heard of this before. Machine learning was injected into next-gen antivirus around 2013. It's the move, not necessarily away from signature, but the add on that signature and definition-based antivirus was not enough. Machine learning enables a detection of anomalies, behavioral detections that have really expanded our overall detection capabilities across the board. Now we're seeing generative AI be introduced and more heavily integrated into security platforms. Now, this is your assistant. This is the natural language interaction. This is the AI that can understand and summarize complex data for you that just gets you that information faster. As we move into current and into the future, we're looking at agentic AI, which is that transition from where generative AI is being that assistant to actually working with you, working for you, going and actually performing tasks. And then lastly, the layer that goes on top of all of this is hyperautomation, where we can converge automation and AI to handle complex workflows and also be context aware in those workflows so that it can make decisions and perform the correct actions. Before we dive too much further into the new analyst workflow, let's just take a second here to talk about the difference of generative AI and agentic AI. I know that I just referenced it, but it's really important for us to understand as analysts that the generative AI, that's your assistant. That is what is going to help you craft your queries when you're threat hunting. It's going to give you the summaries of your incidents. When we go to agentic AI, that framing flips a little bit. No longer is the AI helping me develop my queries. I'm telling the AI to go perform the threat hunt for me, and it is providing that information. So the difference is to guide me through my work with the generative AI versus agentic AI, which is do work for me with my oversight. Now, this isn't a overnight transition. The road to autonomous security, it is an implementation, just like anything else is in an enterprise environment. It takes planning, implementation, steps, and a development path to get there. For that, we've put together the autonomous SOC maturity model. Now, I'm not going to go over each one of these steps in depth, but what I will say is where we're at right now, we're really living in this level 3 zone of partial autonomy. We have LLM-based detections, LLM AI assistance, generative AI. And then we're also dipping into agentic approaches for investigation and low risk operations, all in pursuit of that high autonomy level 4, where we're implementing agentic approaches for most, if not all, SOC processes. Now, for those in the audience that are living within a level 0 environment currently, I'm so sorry. I know you're in pain right now, but it is that much more important to learn and adopt these technologies so that you can be the champion within your own environment and help your environment level up through the stages pursuing that high autonomy mark.
Absolutely. So we've established that the technology is real and it's powerful, but what does that look like when I log in on Monday morning, right? It's not just automating the first task. It's about accelerating me at every stage of my workflow, from the moment that data enters the system to the moment a threat is mitigated, right? So today we're going to walk through, a day in the life of an alert to show you exactly how the autonomous SOC is changing the game here. So let's walk through a life of an alert here. So it usually starts with something mundane, like a phishing alert from my email security solution, right? Maybe I need to go connect the dots from my email gateway to the rest of my tools. How do I do that? It starts with visibility. But we all know that simply getting visibility is where the first battle is often lost, right? In the traditional SOC, before you can even start hunting for a threat, you have to fight the data itself.
So, Jeremy, did you click on a link again?
I don't click on any links. Don't ever send me a link. I'll never click it.
Oh, best way to stay secure, right?
It's the only way to stay secure. So in the age of AI, data is the foundation of everything, right? AI, to a lot of extents, it's garbage in, it's garbage out, right? So let's be honest what visibility looks like in a traditional setup, right? It feels a lot like plumbing, right? We've all been there. You want to onboard a new data source to catch that phishing attack that we had just mentioned. You're stuck, you're writing custom parsers, you're wrestling with regex for days and praying that a comma doesn't break my entire data ingestion pipeline. And once the data's in, it's extremely noisy, right? I'm drowning in logs that are not deduped. Some of them aren't even security relevant, but I'm having to sift through them anyway. Then comes the investigation, right? I'm writing a query to try to find a needle in a haystack. You hit enter, you go get a coffee. If it's a really complex query, maybe you go get lunch. And if it's a really bad query, you may grind the whole system to a halt and get an angry email from the infrastructure team, right? This is the friction that we're trying to remove with AI SIEM. Cloud native SIEM and data pipelines are the foundation of the autonomous SOC. We're trying to move to instant data pipelines, right? No more futzing around with parsers, no manual indexing. You just pipe the data in and it works, right? We're automatically filtering out the noise in the pipeline, about 80% of it, right? Before it even clutters your view. And most importantly, it's really fast, right? Because it is built on that cloud native backend, we can deliver 20 times query performance. So don't take a lunch break when you hunt. You get those answers instantly.
Yeah, and your plumbing analogy is so apt here, where the data pipelines are the plumbing, the actual architecture of the SIEM solution you're piping the data in is that foundational infrastructure that all of your operations run on. By having a cloud native SIEM, it is really a forward-looking, like, we are ready for the needs of tomorrow and the data needs of tomorrow because of this advanced architecture. And it really is a stark contrast from a lot of the on-prem solutions that are reliant on you hosting and managing all of the hardware yourself.
The last thing you want to do during a period when you have a burst period is to go have to run to the data center and rack and stack another SIEM appliance. So that's where that cloud native scale, really, you see the advantages of that. Okay, so now that we have the data flowing, let's go back to our user, right? They've clicked the link, they've opened the document, bad user, right? In the old world, this is the moment of truth where you pray that your signature updates are current, right? But we all know the pain of signature-based solutions. It's an exhausting game of whack-a-mole, right? The attacker changes one line of code, the hash changes, your protection fails. This is where that new arsenal that Anthony was talking about really comes into play. We're not just looking for that known bad signature. We are using static AI to analyze the file's characteristics before it even runs, and then behavioral AI to watch it when it does execute. So in our story, right, this document may look clean to a legacy tool, right? To a legacy, next-gen antivirus tool. Maybe there's no matching signature. Cool, looks secure. Wrong, right? Because we're looking at the behavior, right? A Word document, spawning a PowerShell script, reaching out to an external IP. This is immediately flagged as malicious. And notice at no point in there was a signature required.
Wait, so Jeremy, you're saying that Word documents spawning out PowerShell scripts isn't just normal part of your operations?
I would say for the vast majority of organizations, having Office macros reaching out to external IPs is something you're going to want to take a look at.
Yeah.
So let's peel back the layers of how we actually caught this, right? The first line of defense is static AI. So if signatures is like checking against the FBI most wanted list, right? The attacker changes themselves just a little bit. Maybe they change their name, their date of birth. In this case, the file hash, right? The signature fails. Static AI is different, right? It's inspecting the package before you even open it, right? So we're not so much looking for a match on a signature list. We're looking at the file's composition, right? So we look at its structure, its attributes, to determine if it has malicious intentions that are coded within it, right? So as you can see on the screen, this is an alert for ransomware. And it doesn't matter that this file was compiled 5 minutes ago, or it's a hash that the world has never seen, right? Maybe a 0 day. Static AI recognized the malicious characteristics the minute it was written to the disk. I should say the second it was written to the disk. Yep. And immediately flagged it, right? Where this is like real time. That's another benefit of AI, is like it can take actions much faster than humans can alone. So this is where static AI would flag that to you. So let's say the attacker is really sophisticated, right? They're using a brand new technique that somehow bypassed our static analysis. They made it through the front door. This is around the importance of a defense in depth architecture. This is where behavioral AI takes over. So we stop looking at what the file is and we start watching what it does, right? So in this phishing scenario, user downloads a document, maybe that's normal, right? Spawning a PowerShell script, that's suspicious, right? The script tries to inject code into remote processes and bypass user account control. Definitely malicious at that point, right? So you can see on the screen how the AI is tracking these actions in real time. It's not just saying, hey, you have an issue to go look at, right? Or, hey, you have 1,000 issues to go look at, more likely, right? You see the code injection, you see attempt to escalate privileges. And this is really crucial for you as an analyst, right? Automatically mapping this to the MITRE attack framework makes it easier for me to communicate what exactly is going on, right? I'm not just being told, hey, something's been blocked, we prevented something. I'm being told, hey, this is defense evasion, right? This is privilege escalation, right? This massively increases your situational awareness. When you're clicking into an alert, you already have all this information pre-populated for you.
Not to mention it makes the after action report a lot easier to put together.
Oh, yeah. I think MITRE attack website calls it a common lexicon for defenders. And that's what MITRE attack is, right? Like, makes it easier for me to understand what's going on in my endpoint telemetry and makes it easier for me to communicate with my stakeholders exactly what happened during this attack.
That's so true. Everything maps back to MITRE.
Yep. All roads lead to MITRE. Okay, so behavioral AIs flag the threat. In the traditional SOC, this is where the machine stops and your brain and sometimes your pain begins, right? This is the triage grind. This is where you may have a great detection, but in a queue of 1,000 great detections, you're still drowning. So, maybe I'm opening an alert. I'm checking the IP reputation in one tool. I'm checking the user's history in another tool. I'm going through 5 different screens just to figure out that this alert that I was chasing was a false positive. That is an extremely frustrating experience. In the autonomous SOC, this step is handled by AI, right? So as you can see, the moment an alert hits, AI picks it up. It's autonomously triaging. It's reading the behavioral indicators we just discussed. It's looking for similar threats across your environment and the global environment. And, it's not just passing you the raw data, it's giving you a verdict, right? So it's doing a lot of that swivel chair work for you, preparing the case and preparing the alert for you so that you can come in and make a decision in seconds, not hours.
Wait, so just so I have this right, because I literally just said that my team was spending hours on triage. And now that we're getting to the position here with Purple AI that it's just done. It's just fully automated by the time the analyst opens the alert.
Happens automatically.
I wish I had that when I was at the SOC. Honestly, I do wish that, not from that marketing angle. No, as a SOC manager, I wish I had this technology ready to go when I was there.
So how we do this at SentinelOne is through a feature called auto triage. So this is an extension of our AI called Purple AI. Auto triage comes in, well, there's 2 main components of auto triage, right? There is AI similarity analysis. So what this is using is deep neural networks. We have a bunch of really cool advanced AI that is looking across trillions with a T, of data points across the entire SentinelOne population. So we are not just doing a simple, hey, is the alert name the same? No, we are semantically matching alerts for similarity, right? So let's say my alert is in Japanese and your alert's in Spanish, doesn't matter, right? We are able to cluster those alerts together based on similar attributes. So in this case, we found, 1,000 plus similar alerts that have been seen before. Now, with those 1,000 similar alerts, I can do what's called the community verdict. So the community verdict builds off of that, right? Those 1,000 times that it's been seen before, how has it been triaged by the global analyst community, right? 94% of the time it's been seen, the community believes this to be a true positive, right? This is really valuable for me as an analyst because this is a second set of eyes on everything, right? Especially in situations where you're unsure. Now, why should I trust this, right? Is this just another score? What does this mean, right? We are heavily weighting the expertise of people that are very good at triaging threats, right? Our own threat services, so our own MDR analysts that, all they do all day is triage threats in SentinelOne, but also the analyst community at large, the Fortune 100s, every SentinelOne customer, you get them as the second set of eyes. So, as an analyst, I'm clicking in. I'm not just getting a bunch of technical data, right? I'm getting a human readable explanation of exactly what happened. I'm getting a community verdict that is high confidence. But when we speak to people in the industry about this, data privacy is the first thing that comes up. Big Brother. I don't want Big Brother in my console. It's important to know that we do not train our AI on customer data. We do this in a way that respects user privacy by stripping out anything that could be used to identify a customer. So it can't be reverse engineered in any way to individual alerts or individual customers. We're looking at this anonymously and in aggregate across the global population.
Yeah, and this is really important. I can speak to this as a director of cyber that was very concerned around data privacy as we were implementing AI within my client organizations. But as we take a look at security and the threat landscape, we as defenders need this to face the threats that we're going to be facing on the horizon. With how quickly things are moving, how quickly AI can enact an attack, we are going to need a unified front of defenders sharing intelligence like this so that we can effectively defend as a unit.
Agreed. So, okay, the alert's triaged and, it's confirmed. We know we have a problem, right? Now we need to know how bad is it and where else did this happen? So this brings us to hunting and investigation, right? In the traditional SOC, this is where a lot of momentum dies, right? Maybe I have a hypothesis. Hey, this adversary tried to delete our backups. But to answer it, I have to write a really complex query. I have to write, remember the correct field names, the syntax, the logic. And if I get a comma wrong, syntax error, my query fails, right? Nobody likes that. This barrier prevents those junior analysts from being able to do those types of things self-service, right? A lot of times they're escalating tickets just because they don't know how to write the query, right? And then you're pulling your senior analysts out of, higher value things they could be doing to spend their time wrestling with SPL queries instead of fighting the adversary. So our big, focus with Purple AI was about removing that barrier, right? Making everything natural language. As you see, an analyst can simply ask, hey, I want to look at attempts to delete, volume shadow copies, VSS, my backups, right? AI understands the intent, translates it into the query, pulls the data instantly. So this is really kind of democratizing threat hunting in a way that, you can follow your intuition, you can, follow your curiosity and focus on building the right hypotheses and not have to worry about the technical hurdles of worrying out, how to make a query that returns results.
The hours spent in KQL crafting queries, if I had a utility that could just build those for me, it would have been so nice. And then, of course, exactly what you were saying, one piece of syntax is off and it blows up the entire query. And then you're hunting for that one little spot, one little icon or character. So no, having the capability to democratize threat hunting, enable more of the junior analysts to take on threat hunting, it's going to more democratize the overall labor and the overall work across the team a little bit better and give us all more opportunities to do the work that is actually hard hitting for our role.
Exactly. So here's what this looks like in practice, right? If you note the interface, this does not look like your typical SIM query builder. This looks like a chat, right? So you can ask your question in plain English or any of 11 other languages. And Purple AI does three critical things. It's going to translate. So it'll take your natural language question, correct the syntax, run the query. It'll summarize. So it'll return the results. And again, rather than having to go through, 106 returned results, I get, a natural language summary, and I know exactly what I'm looking at. And it's guiding you, right? So if you notice, there are suggested follow-up questions. This is really where AI becomes the force multiplier. It's helping anticipate your next move, right? You found the threat, and maybe Purple is saying, hey, do you want to check for, MITRE T1140 events, or, should we look for user creation events? It's like having a threat hunter sitting next to you for every hunt, helping guide your investigation.
And one of the other really side benefits that you get is Purple AI also works as an LLM as well. So it can help you develop and craft the communications, the emails to stakeholders and other concerned parties much more efficiently than you would if you're just having to pull all of that information together manually. I mean, I would spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes just on drafting the email to the stakeholders, just making sure it had the right information, the right tone for the right targeted audience, that it was going to really land with them and enable us to continue moving forward. Having Purple AI just craft that for you immediately, it's extremely quick and extremely efficient.
That's actually one of the most popular things that we hear from people who are using Purple is like, I've done this awesome threat hunt and investigation, and I found something really, really bad, right? I need to communicate this in an urgent way to, maybe the DevSecOps team to go fix this image, or, it's really helpful in being able to communicate the results of hunts and investigations to external stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So we've confirmed the threat. We understand the scope. Now it's time to stop the bleeding. Right? This brings us to our final stage, which is response and remediation. So in the traditional SOC, this is where the fire drill begins. It's the break glass moment, right? Maybe I'm able to kill the process on the endpoint, but that's not enough. I have to reset the user's credentials. I have to block the IP address for the command and control server. I have to open up an IT ticket for, IT to go reimage the machine. Usually that's 3 different machines, 3 different tickets, a whole lot of waiting. Meanwhile, the adversary is still moving through your environment this entire time as you're waiting for tickets to be picked up. So in the autonomous SOC, we use hyperautomation to help orchestrate this entire response from a single point of command. So the endpoint's isolated, the user's Okta credentials are automatically reset, and a high priority ticket was created in your ITSM platform. What used to be this multi-hour coordination across the entire company happens now in seconds, right? Meaning that the threat is completely neutralized so you can move on to the next one.
There's a massive increase or actually decrease in the time to respond, because you can immediately trigger containment procedures without needing any other team to get involved. It's really that next step up in terms of immediate containment.
Yeah, and I tried not to say one click because I know that's too marketing-y, but actually in the UI it is one click to kick off a hyperautomation workflow. But we showed you the what, right, which is the instant remediation. And let's talk about the how, right, because automation itself can carry some baggage, right? We talk about burnout, right, an analyst burnout in terms of that high stake stress, right? Like I hear it often compared to like air traffic controllers. But there's another side to it, right? There's the repetitive strain of just like the mundane everyday tasks, the Control-C, Control-V loop, copying an IP from one tab, pasting it in another, copying a username, pasting it into a ticket. That whole context switching is the death of efficiency. So for years, right, we've been told, hey, SOAR is the answer to this, right? But for many of us, SOAR just sounds like this really expensive project that requires, 2 full-time engineers just to keep the lights on. Oftentimes, SOAR becomes an experts-only game, right, where you're relying on these fragile Python scripts, and the minute the vendor changes the API, everything's broken, right? And that just doesn't scale. So that's why we built hyperautomation to be different. So as you can see on the screen, it's this drag and drop canvas. We're really democratizing automation. I think democratizing, I've said that a few times today. It's going to be the word of the day. So that the analyst who understands the workflow, right? You're the one who understands your daily workflow. You are empowered to build the automations, right? So this is your force multiplier. This is your ticket out of those soul-crushing repetitive tasks so that you can do more valuable things with your day.
I'm sure that we sent some shivers down our audience's spine when we said SOAR. I know it certainly did for me. Just the countless hours creating all of the rules, and then the countless hours going and fixing them once they broke.
Yep. All right, so we've walked you through the workflow from visibility to remediation. You've seen how we do this at SentinelOne. So now we want to talk about the so what. Cool, new technology. What does this mean for me? Right? We call this section level up because that's exactly what this technology is going to help you do in your role. When you strip away the parser writing, the query debugging, the manual ticket logging, you're not sitting around with nothing left to do, right? right? Like the reality is we all have a lot of things we need to do and don't have time to do, right? But what you're left with is the stuff that you were actually hired to do, right? We're talking about empowering you to have greater impact on the business, frankly, getting back some of that job satisfaction of what brought you to cyber in the first place. So it starts with visibility, right? We're using AI to pre-filter 80% of the noise. We're stopping that garbage in, garbage out cycle of SecOps. With that clean data foundation, I'm able to support 61% more endpoints, right? As part of my job. That feeds into detection because I'm not buried in noise. I can identify real threats 63% faster. Flows into triage and investigation. AI is helping force multiply me. My investigation efficiency improves 41%. I'm not wrestling with syntax. I'm spending time on strategy. And finally, with response, right? Automated remediation is helping me, resolve threats 55% faster. So look at all this time savings in this graphic. Isn't this great? But I want you to look at the graphic, not as a list of features, but as a flywheel. And if you notice that what's sitting in the middle of it all is the analyst expertise, right? The entire purpose of the autonomous SOC is to build a system that accelerates you, right? When all of these pieces work together, the flywheel spins faster. You spend less time fighting your tools and more time fighting the adversary. This is how we help you scale your expertise.
Yeah, and really get back to the role that you were hired for. The L1, L2, even L3 analysts, those roles were never intended just to be, triage jockeys that are just going through triage nonstop. There's a lot more that goes into the analyst role that we've seen erode over the years as this data explosion has happened with all the logs and telemetry we're able to pull in, but we haven't had the administrative utilities on top of that to then make managing that data efficient so that we can actually get to the other aspects of the role.
Exactly. So, hey, this is, maybe a pretty stupid hypothetical, but, what would you do with your day if you had 0 alerts in your backlog? You sit here for a couple seconds and I want you to think about it, right? Like, what would you do with your day?
Fantasyland.
Right, Fantasyland. Would you threat hunt? Would you do exposure and vulnerability management? Would you try to reduce blind spots? Would you, take a nap? Would you take certs? Would you take a vacation, right? These are all of the things, because of AI, it enables you to expand your scope of what you do in your role, right? You can be more proactive. You can implement new tools and controls. It's all of the strategic things I don't have time to do now. So let's talk about the AI-enabled analyst. First, let's recap, maybe the not-so-fun existence of the traditional analyst. Right, at 8 a.m., I'm logging into a SIM queue. It's got hundreds, if not thousands, of new alerts that have come in between the time I logged off and the time I logged on. Right, I spend the next 3 hours in the triage grind. I'm switching between 5 to 10 different tools just to investigate a single alert. And hey, I feel a little defeated because most of the things I'm chasing end up being nothing. Right, most of them end up being false positives. And while I'm chasing the false positives, hey, the queue is growing larger. That's no fun. Right, the last 4 hours of my day, maybe I did find the needle in the haystack, right? Maybe I did find a true positive that's worth investigating. I spend the rest of my day piecing together to try to get that story, to try to, build the narrative of exactly what happened. And at the end of the day, I log off. If I log off at 5, which I think, is a nice to have, but, maybe I'm logging off at 5 and I'm feeling reactive. I'm feeling defeated. I know that when I come into work tomorrow, the same thing is waiting for me.
Yeah, I think for a majority of listeners, getting off at 5 is a dream.
So let's talk about the AI-enabled analyst, right? How does that 9 to 5 change or 8 to 5 change, right? They spend the first hour of their day reviewing AI-vetted incidents, right? Maybe some of them have been pre-triaged. Right, they're looking at correlated TTPs rather than just endless lines of telemetry, right? And you have a summary for each, so you know exactly what's going on. I spend the next 3 hours, making sure that I'm validating the AI's findings, and if necessary, in a single click, authorizing that response. Maybe I have some time to do some additional investigation, and I'm hopping in and I'm asking, show me all the endpoints that have communicated with this IP in the last 72 hours, right? I write the query, results are instant.
A query is written for you by Purple AI.
Query's written for me, exactly. So what do I do with the last 4 hours of my day? It's free time for you to do what you got into cyber to do, right? With the manual work handled, you focus on the high impact work, right? You're hunting for threats. You're collaborating with the engineering team to write new detection rules, right? At the end of the day, you're feeling strategic and in control because you're getting to really apply a lot of those skills that, frankly, you don't get to apply in your day job today.
And to top it off, you're making it home for dinner.
And you get to make it home for dinner. So, we've showed you the speed and the scale, but we know that adopting AI is really, it requires trust, right? And that's why we built the autonomous SOC on 3 core pillars. It's human-centric, right? We've said this many times throughout the session. You stay in control, right? The AI is there to provide you those insights, those recommendations, but you are the one that is providing the strategic oversight. It's symbiotic, right? We don't view this as a zero-sum game where it's human versus machine. It's human plus machine, right? And that symbiosis is really key to unlocking this evolution of SecOps. Privacy and accessibility, right? We know AI raises data privacy concerns. We've designed this platform with a privacy-first mindset. We are emphasizing transparency so that analysts know exactly why the AI is doing what it's doing and where your data is residing. So this kind of guiding philosophy around AI is making sure that the AI is serving you and not the other way around.
Yeah, we learned a thing or two from Skynet about taking the human out of the loop. So we're not gonna follow their pathway there.
Exactly. So I want to take you back to one of the first slides that Anthony showed you, right? That frustrating day in the life roller coaster where triage took hours and you were in the very frustrated zone the entire day. This is what the day in the life looks like in the autonomous SOC, right? We've compressed those workflows that used to take hours down to minutes, right? But more importantly, look at the satisfaction curve, right? Triage isn't a grind. Investigation is not struggling with syntax. Response is not a fire drill, right? Because we remove the friction at every stage, you get to stay in the very happy zone. And that's a good place to be from what I've heard. In the old world, right, we had a question mark next to proactive risk management because nobody ever had time to do it, right? Here, it's the natural conclusion of your workflow, right? You finish the alert quickly and you immediately pivot to proactive hardening. So this isn't just a better way to work, it's a better way to live, right? But what does that mean for you in your career? Can you tell us a little bit more, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. So each of our roles, each role in the SOC is going to need to evolve as these new tool sets are implemented. And it's all about using these tool sets and using AI to expand our capabilities. To detail that out a little bit further, I'm going to run through these really quick. The junior analyst, they're no longer the triage jockey. They are now an AI validator and initial investigator, validating findings from the AI, performing that initial investigation, and even triggering automated remediations as necessary. The senior analyst is no longer getting pulled into low-level IR, but instead they're focusing their time on strategic threat hunting and offensive modeling for the organization. The security engineer, gone are the days of the manual detection rule development and having to put those queries together piece by piece. Now it's AI assisted. And so the security engineer is working with the AI to craft these detection rules, as well as reviewing and approving automatically generated proactive detection rules that the AI has already added to the overall environment. The threat intel analyst, they're no longer manually correlating threat intel from threat intel feeds. Instead, AI is handling that, and their role is to then take that oversight, looking at the trends, looking at the data. So now you're no longer thinking tactically about all of these different data sources. You're now able to look at it holistically and see the trends. And then last but certainly not least, SOC manager. I spent so long in tactical management and jumping into incident response, low-level IR, or detection engineering just because we had gaps there that needed help. Well, with the implementation of these AI tool sets, there is so much additional assistance in that area. You're really elevating from tactical management to that strategic leadership that I know every SOC manager wants to be in that position. It is just one of the most difficult positions to get to as a SOC manager.
Yeah, so this is really interesting, right? Like every role in the SOC is kind of undergoing this transformation over the next few years. But as somebody who used to be a SOC manager yourself, how has this changed the hiring process for the SOC? Like what's changed now that AI has come into the picture?
Yeah, it's changing the way that we need to approach skill sets when we're hiring. Previously, with the deluge of data that we had, you had to be very detail-oriented and also very fast-paced to work in a SOC. Now that we're seeing that change where detail orientation is still critical. That's not going anywhere. But because we have these AI tool sets that are bolstering our capabilities within the SOC, now having the strategic mindset is so much more important. That strategic security mind that is asking the right questions, is finding the right questions to ask and to work with your AI assistant in finding in threat hunting or in investigations.
Yeah, so it's really about that strategic, security mind, right? The part of our brains that we have to shut off when we're in triage mode, right? Like the strategic thinking, right? It's knowing what questions to ask and what hypothesis, for a hunt. It becomes more about that than having to worry about the hard skills of learning how to form a query, right? It's knowing what questions to ask rather than struggling with trying to figure out how to ask them and write the right query.
You can still be effective without being a Power Query or KQL expert.
Exactly. So, as AI has come into the picture, how does this whole apprenticeship model, that the whole industry is built around, how does that evolve, right? Like, what does AI mean for your progression as you move through these different roles?
Yeah, so cybersecurity has always been in that spot where it's like one step away from like officially needing an apprenticeship like model. Cybersecurity, IT, utilizing and having mentors that help build you up is critical. That's not going to go anywhere. But what these tool sets do is give you one more mentor in that space. It is a technical mentor that is helping you learn your query development, or it is helping you build out detection rules. That kind of assistance from these AI tools, it reduces the load on all of the other team because you have that automated assistant, and it is going to help you continue to level up and upscale your capabilities because you have a tool set that is there helping you develop that is available 24/7. And it isn't dependent on your manager's calendar and having available time to help build you up or teach you something. You have a tool set at your hands, at your disposal right away. Now comes the time in our conversation where we get to talk about the future. And I've really been looking forward to this. So as we set up front, we are looking holistically at the industry and making what are our best assessments of what is to come. Now, with how quickly AI evolves and has been developing, we could be wrong. But I feel like we've hit the nail on the head with what we're looking at as we are driving towards SOC 2030. Now, in SOC 2030, we have continuous assessments. Your environment is always being assessed. The attack surface for your organization is checked repeatedly, consistently, so you know when holes form and you know of any potential blind spots that you might have. In terms of intel, instead of the manual correlation of threat intelligence, we have broader correlation across threat intel feeds, vulnerability disclosures, and chatter from the dark web, all centralized so that it is easy to see the trends, review everything, and make the best decision possible. And then last but not least, the proactive hardening. Now we're going to have AI tool sets deeply integrated into our security. That is going to be providing and running assessments against our environment to identify where our most likely future security incidents will be coming from, along with prescriptive and automated hardening tasks to prevent them. This is a really strong SOC model, not even talking about all of the other automation that we've implemented already through the earlier parts of this conversation. So why do we need something like this? And that is to be able to encounter the threats that we're going to see in 2030. That is AI-powered info stealers or malware that identifies and then extracts your most sensitive information. Or the malicious agentic agents that no longer need a hacker to have hands on keyboard to actually execute an attack. They can dwell within the environment, autonomously learn and make decisions on their own and execute the attack at the exact right moment to cause most impact. And then last but not least here as well, polymorphic agents. Now we've had polymorphic code for some time. Well, as we move into the next generation, we see polymorphic AI agents that are able to completely rewrite themselves or obfuscate themselves to really prevent detection, allow them to dwell in the environment for a longer period of time, and be able to also spread further and expand their reach further. So I don't say this to scare anyone here. This will be a very interesting time for security, but as we continue to develop up our defensive tool sets, implementing our AI capabilities, we are going to be more and more prepared to face these kind of threats.
That sounds a lot more like Skynet. No, I mean, it's true. It's, just as defenders are adopting the latest and greatest in AI technology, which, by the way, is doubling in capabilities every 6 months, against the backdrop of this, adversaries are picking up the latest models as well, right? And it's this constant race that if we are not adopting AI, we are falling behind because adversaries are.
Security's always been a cat and mouse game. Always. AI is no different. If we are slower to the curve, then we are at a disadvantage. With that, we want to go ahead and open up for Q&A. We really appreciate everyone being here today. We have a few questions in the chat, so we can go ahead and start knocking those out. The first one came in, which was from Stephen Smith. How do we get our S1 bomber jacket? This might be an employee exclusive. I'll need to double check on that, but we can look into that.
Okay, so who or what validates that the instant remediation was done appropriately? So you have a couple of options, right? In hyperautomation, you depending on what you're automating, you have a degree of control, right? Like if it's something that's very low risk, you can set to run automatically. If it's something like, sending a user a Slack message automatically, that's something you can just have as part of a hyperautomation workflow and it'll just run. For things like quarantining an endpoint or, suspending use of certain applications, that's something where you may want a human in the loop, either to confirm the workflow that has been kicked off automatically, and that's something you can build in as a step in the workflow, or, directly when an analyst is looking at an alert, they just click automate, and then they can select from which workflow they would like to kick off at that point in time. So it kind of depends on your operating model, right? And depends on what you're trying to automate. But in general, like, you always have control over, what gets instantly remediated, depending on what that looks like for your environment.
Yeah, and within the context of our conversation today, this is also these are could be your analysts. This is the transition from operator to orchestrator. The analysts are also turning into AI validators, validating the work that is being done, both in investigations by AI, but also within the remediation containment procedures done by that AI as well.
Awesome. And then we have a question here from Hazel. Can Purple AI replace our SOAR tool? So I think it's very much a complementary story, right? Like the whole AI, triaging an alert, giving me summaries, maybe recommending what response to take, and then the actual automation piece, right? If you want to think of it as like the brains and the legs, like the automation is the legs, right? It's going to go do things, right? So it's not going to replace your SOAR, but the combination of Purple AI and hyperautomation, you have the AI giving you that context, that reinforcement, and then hyperautomation is that drag and drop, easy to build automation interface that goes and kicks off the actual automations themselves.
Yeah, hyperautomation is the kind of the next generation of SOAR, and it is coupled with Purple AI to make it as powerful as it is. We have a question here. Do I need to use that drag and drop SOAR functionality for triage and investigation? right up. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I can take that one. No. So the triage and investigation feature that I showcased in this presentation, that is completely out of the box, requires no configuration by you. It is simply a toggle that is turned on, and you get all that awesome information. Now, drag and drop functionality is great if I want to go take that and go build something custom to my organization that, when I see an alert of this type, I want to go send a message or open a ticket or do this or revoke credentials, right? Like it's about taking it that next step further. So you don't necessarily need to use it for triage and investigation, but let's say you want additional context, that you want to build a custom workflow to bring that in. That's where you would use hyperautomation.
And if you don't want to use drag and drop in particular, you can also code it in Python.
Yes, I said no Python required. But by all means, if you're a sore head and you like to, build all your own custom stuff, that's fully supported as well. Now, one of the cool things with hyperautomation, one of the really painful things about SOAR is like creating new automation connectors. Hyperautomation can actually connect to any SaaS application with an API. So like maybe we don't have a connector for your homegrown system in our, integration catalog. If it has a SaaS API, you can write an automation to it. So it really kind of opens the scope of what you can programmatically control and automate as part of your day job. We have a guy who's on the engineering team who automated something to do with his washing machine, right? Like he gets a notification, it kicks off some other workflows. Like it doesn't even have to be security specific use cases. Like anything in your day that you're doing more than 5 times a day, you should probably make an automation workflow for it.
The big question with that, though, is does that washing machine run Crisis?
It could. I'm not sure, but it can run a workflow. So we wanted to provide these resources for you that we've put together. So the Practitioner's Guide to Thriving in the Autonomous SOC is really a distillation of the concepts that we covered on the webinar today. I've included the QR code here. We have a little short link. Feel free to bookmark that. That is a great resource that kind of captures a lot of what we talked about today, as well as the business value of Purple AI. So there's some really, really great intel in here. Like, don't take me and Anthony's word for it. If you want to hear what it's like as an analyst using Purple AI, that has real world interviews anonymized from current customers, and you can hear directly from them how Purple AI is transforming their day to day, right? To an extent, don't believe me, believe them, right? So I'll leave this up on the screen here for a little bit, but these are amazing resources. They're also available on the SentinelOne website. Are there any other questions?
And yeah, James, thank you for your questions. Both of those questions are more forward-looking roadmap centric, which we're not really going to be covering here today.
Okay. Well, in that case, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We know you could be doing any number of things. You could be grabbing lunch. You could be doing anything, but we're happy you decided to take an hour out of your day and spend it with us. We hope you found today's session to be valuable. We hope that you take away that SentinelOne is thinking about, making your lives easier every single day. That is the driving factor behind what we do here. We are technologists, but at the end of the day, we're here for the SOC analysts and making their life easier. If you have any other questions, I believe we're going to be sending out a copy of these slides afterwards. But we really appreciate you for taking the time this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.